I was 9 years old, I returned to China, to my grandparents' rural community there. And actually seeing the vast plantations, neat arrays of green and brown, really imprinted on me that Arcadian ideal of agricultural farming. Something that has at its very core remained the same for over 10,000 years. But in today's fashion of innovation, new approaches are devised, such as restorative ocean farming, the cultivation of kelp and shellfish species to benefit the environment instead of harming it. But first, we need to look at the current problems with modern farming, and after that, we'll look at how restorative ocean farming actually works and how it's better than modern farming. We'll also look at how it will be a strong fit for New Zealand in particular, as well as some potential pros and cons. Well, frankly, current farming procedures in New Zealand have an abundance of disadvantages. Agricultural farming, most notably dairy farming, has led to an appalling degradation in water quality. Harmful bacteria from feces infesting waterways in which many Kiwis swim. The destruction of rivers, lakes, estuaries by soil erosion, and the deposition of the soil in our aquatic habitats. Blooms of algae choking rivers and killing fish in a process called eutrophication. This is where the fertilizers that we use to grow food run off into our waterways and are absorbed by microscopic algae, causing a massive population boom, which kills off any aquatic plants and fish. I don't know about you, but personally, I fail to see how any of us contributes to any semblance of the clean, green image that our country prides itself on. And our aquaculture is not much better either. The salmon farms in the Marlborough Sounds produce enormous quantities of fecal waste and discarded food, which spread to the environment, damaging ecosystems. And the practice itself requires high-protein fish meal, made from hundreds of smaller fish caught in the wild to feed a single farmed fish. It's the ecological equivalent of farming cheetahs for food. Yet these are just some of the many disadvantages of modern farming methods. Fortunately, however, there is an alternative, and it's called restorative ocean farming. Now, what that is the cultivation of first kelp and second shellfish species to in fact benefit the environment instead of harming it. Such ocean farms consist of kelp forests anchored to long ropes floating between buoys with mussel and scallop nets suspended between them. So how exactly is it better than modern farming, though? Well, first off, restorative ocean farming is one of the most sustainable forms of food production on the planet, requiring absolutely no fresh water, no fertilizers, and no pesticides. It also exploits vertical space much more efficiently by using the entire water column to grow food. And in fact, kelp itself is one of the fastest growing organisms on Earth, growing nearly 10 times faster than wheat. That's 10 times the yield per year. These advantages demonstrate the potential benefits of restorative ocean farming over current farming methods. And it would be a logical fit for New Zealand as well. I mean, our country is an island surrounded entirely by water, and we have the 9th longest coastline in the world. And yes, this fit is seen to some extent in our current aquaculture industry, but that's shrinking with falling employment. Ocean farming cannot resolve this problem by providing new market with new supply and demand. What's more, our pre-existing aquaculture industry, notably regarding shellfish such as these, would mean that there'd be no lack of expertise in shellfish farming or marine infrastructure. This would translate into a logical fit for New Zealand's particular strengths and effective integration into our economy. Take, for example, the Firth of Thames, heavily polluted by dairy runoff from the Waikato region. The fertilizers drained off those farms, now causing prolific algal blooms, a symptom of the gradually deteriorating environment. But these waters could be rejuvenated as the kelp and shellfish filter out those eutrophication-causing nitrates from the water. And theoretically speaking, a network of small ocean farms equaling the size of the Firth would provide enough protein to feed the entirety of New Zealand nearly 10 times over. And Thames itself, once considered a major fishing port, is now much a shadow of its former self. Yet the infrastructure for aquaculture remains, ready to be refurbished for ocean farming purposes. And for the small township, it would provide a source of employment and economic growth. Like Thames, cities ranging from Gisborne to Greymouth could potentially benefit from restorative ocean farming, and thus it would play to New Zealand's particular strengths, as well as potentially re-energize some of our cities. It would also have several social benefits. In fact, kelp itself is a superfood, combining a protein content greater than soybeans, a calcium content greater than milk, an abundance of essential minerals. Also, you might be familiar with omega-3s, a nutrient which supports healthy heart function as well as a myriad of other health benefits. But fish don't produce omega-3s. They consume them from kelp and other fish. Thus, by eating as fish do, we can get the same benefits without exerting pressure on wild fish stocks. And these ocean farms would have a low aesthetic impact, because all you actually see are buoys, while at the same time, they will provide local communities with extremely healthy and organic foods. However, one potential downside is that the kelp will be too effective of a superfood, concentrating too much essential minerals that it would be possible to overdose on some of them, such as iodine. And for some people, it might be a bit of an acquired taste. However, restorative ocean farming also has enormous potential to improve the quality of our environment. One major environmental problem in New Zealand is the repulsive water quality in coastal and estuarine regions. In fact, some sites have nitrate concentrations 170 times higher than median levels for seawater. Ocean farms can significantly improve water quality in those regions by filtering out those nitrates, because the kelp and the shellfish filter out those nitrates from the water, essentially absorbing and storing them before these products are harvested and taken away. In fact, green-lipped mussels have already been introduced into the Hauraki Gulf to do this in the Save Our Gulf project, and a single adult oyster can filter nearly 200 liters of water in a day. Also, the kelp undergoes photosynthesis, absorbing the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and combining it with water to form oxygen and sugars. But don't all plants do this? And that's correct, but kelp absorbs 5 times the amount that land plants do, reducing the extent of the severe problems of global warming and ocean acidification. The latter occurs when you have that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and it dissolves in water to form carbonic acid, potentially dissolving the shells of shellfish, which could be a major concern for our shellfish industry in the future. These ocean farms can also rejuvenate entire aquatic ecosystems by restoring their biodiversity. How this works is that the kelp forests and the actual farming gear used function as artificial reefs, and thus once barren patches of water can now potentially form diverse aquatic ecosystems with the help of ocean farms. The kelp can also be used to produce other environmentally beneficial products, such as kelp biofuel. Now, you've probably heard of ethanol biofuel, produced from corn, and how it's a carbon-neutral fuel, which means it absorbs the same amount of carbon dioxide when it's grown that it releases when it's burnt. But kelp, because it grows so fast, can produce biofuel at 5 times the rate. Also, and the more we use biofuel instead of petrol, the more we drive New Zealand towards that dream of carbon neutrality. The kelp can also be used to produce the other environmentally beneficial products, such as organic fertilizers, which are ones that don't tend to cause eutrophication compared to synthetic fertilizers. Thus, all in all, there are many potential environmental benefits of restorative ocean farming for New Zealand. However, one potential environmental con will be if the kelp spread into the environment as an invasive species. However, this weed problem could be easily fixed if we only farmed native kelp species, ones that already have biological controls in place. It would also have several economic benefits. As a blue-collar job that requires just relatively little experience or prior knowledge, it can provide easily accessible jobs. And literally all you actually need to do to farm kelp is to plant with the kelp seed and harvest. There's no weeding or watering, and there's few pests or diseases. Everything it needs to grow comes from the environment. And under optimal conditions, you can go from seed to harvest in just 2 weeks. And the open source design of these farms would mean that they can be easily replicated and adapted for anyone to use. What's more, the Greenway Foundation offers numerous benefits to new ocean farmers, ranging from startup grants and guaranteed purchasing of crops to developing new and stable markets via regional partnerships. And thus, such incentives can attract new ocean farmers, and in the process provide jobs, reduce poverty, and grow New Zealand's economy. However, one potential economic con will be if the supply exceeded the demand, which is given because of the especially high growth rate of kelp. However, in that case, this can at least be mitigated because the kelp can be used to form the other environmentally beneficial products I mentioned earlier, such as kelp biofuel and organic fertilizers. And with all new technologies, there comes a crucial risk. Is my target market large enough? Well, the shellfish industry is already well established in New Zealand as a strong export market, where 86% of all shellfish harvested in New Zealand is going overseas. But how many people do you know who actually eat kelp? And the answer is probably none. But think of all those health-conscious people to whom kelp as a superfood would directly appeal to. All those nosh and farrow shoppers looking for extremely healthy yet organic foods. As a food, kelp would certainly fit into that existing healthy food market. But as a truly multifunctional crop, it certainly falls into several others as well. So today you've learned that restorative ocean farming can provide an environmentally sustainable alternative to modern farming. Hopefully you can also see as how it would be a strong fit for New Zealand in particular, as well as how its potential pros, social, environmental, and economic, outweigh its cons. Thus, that Arcadian ideal of agricultural farming, which I was subjected to in early years, is no longer a one-way road. Instead, we can pursue innovative offshoots such as restorative ocean farming in our quest to carve out the future of farming. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Where is this being done in the world?
So it's been very prominent in the United States, so at least 10 ocean farms have been established in the United States.
And how large are these farms?
So the original farm was 20 acres, so that's around 8 hectares, I believe, and that's in a sound region.
And that will change the ecosystem radically.
Yes, because the kelp forest, they can provide a lot of niches, which is basically habitats for a lot of different species.
But a lot of new species, perhaps. So the unintended consequences may be exotic species about which we don't know the effects.
Well, I think that the exotic species would in fact be species that are already present in the environment.
If you change the ecosystem quite radically, why would you just get the same old species?
I think that what I mean is that before there's little species, little biodiversity, and when species that are able to live in those conditions will live in those conditions, because these conditions will change because of the kelp and the ocean farms.
So you would get exotic species potentially?
Yes, from out of that environment, ecosystem.
Which is a danger to New Zealand, of course. Can I just revisit one of your stats? You said we could feed all of New Zealand 10 times over?
Yep.
With what? How?
So basically, the stat is from the original founders who said that if we have a series of ocean farms the size of Washington State, we can feed can provide enough protein to feed the entire world. And if we extrapolate that to the area of the Firth, it's basically extrapolation data. So the kelp itself provides protein as well as the shellfish, but not everyone's going to be an ocean vegetarian. So it's more of a theoretical hypothesis rather than something that might actually happen.
And just to note, the kelp being used as a liquid fertilizer, you still risk over-eutrophication, whether it's organic or inorganic.
So organic fertilizers, they're ones that break down as more nutrients are absorbed into the farmland. So synthetic fertilizers, because they dissolve in water most of the time, they can give an excess of nutrients more than the existing farmland can absorb, and sometimes this can flow into rivers as well.
But what are you saying? Organic nutrients don't do that?
Organic, because they're complex molecules, they have to break down first for them to become soluble most of the time. So like manure and compost, they're organic fertilizers, so they have to break down first.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.